The most important moment in Las Vegas doesn't happen on the Strip. It happens months earlier, at a kitchen table, when a middle-class family opens their bank app and asks a simple question: is Vegas still worth it? That question used to have an easy answer. For decades, Las Vegas sold certainty. Rooms under $50 a night, all-you-can-eat buffets for under $5, and the comfort of knowing a trip wouldn't spiral financially. Even if you lost a little at the tables, you still left feeling entertained. Today, that certainty is gone. Resort fees now average $45, $55 a night. Buffets at places like Bacchanal or Wynn start at $60, $85. Prices feel unstable, fees feel arbitrary, and the risk no longer feels optional. According to the latest available data from the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, visitor volume was already down 8.8% by September, a clear sign that the problem isn't affordability alone, but trust. This video isn't about tourists who suddenly can't afford Vegas. It's about a city that quietly redesigned itself in a way that made its most loyal visitors decide to stay home. This didn't happen overnight. It was the result of a series of quiet shifts. And once you understand them, the middle-class exit from Las Vegas stops being a mystery. Let's start with the biggest shift: the relentless rise in costs that turned what used to be a predictable getaway into a financial nightmare for the middle class. Step onto the Las Vegas Strip in late 2025, and the change is unmistakable even on weekends. Casino floors stretch wide with rows of empty slot machines and tables waiting for players who simply aren't coming. Buffets and food courts no longer have the long, winding lines that once defined peak hours. Some bars close earlier during the week. Housekeeping increasingly operates on an on-request basis. At the same time, hotels continue advertising tempting deals online, only for guests to encounter a growing list of add-ons that quietly drain excitement long before they even reach their rooms. These scenes aren't proof of collapse, but they are clear signals of a system adjusting under pressure. Now, ask yourself a simple question that many middle-class families quietly ask at home. Years ago, a 3-night Vegas trip for a family of 4 could realistically come in under $500 for basic costs. Today, what does that same trip actually look like? Start with resort fees. Across the Strip, these now average roughly $45, $55 per night. They are mandatory, not optional, and they are often excluded from the advertised room price. Properties like Bellagio and the Cosmopolitan sit at the high end of that range. The issue isn't just the money, it's the feeling of being misled at the booking stage, when the price you click on isn't the price you end up paying. Food tells a similar story. What used to be $5 all-you-can-eat buffets are now $60, $85 or more at top venues, with drinks and tips billed separately. Parking, once standard and free, can easily add $100 or more over a 4 to 5 day stay. Then come the smaller charges that accumulate quietly: early check-in or late checkout fees of $30, $50, minibar touch fees, paid Wi-Fi if the resort fee doesn't fully cover it, and ATM withdrawal fees approaching $13 per transaction. Put this together in a typical scenario. A middle-class family books a room advertised at $150 per night. Add a $50 resort fee plus tax, and the real cost jumps to $220 or more per night. Over 3 nights, that gap alone adds hundreds of dollars. Add parking at $25 per day, 2 buffet meals at $80 per person, and a few bottles of water or beers at $15.20 each, and it's easy to rack up an additional $300, $500 in so-called hidden costs during a short stay. The final bill often ends up 30–50% higher than what the family originally expected. That's the moment the emotional shift happens. Guests don't feel poor. They feel nickel and dimed, mentally exhausted, and unsure they ever agreed to these terms. The most convincing evidence of this shift doesn't come from corporate statements. It comes from how visitors describe their experiences. On Reddit, one guest wrote about staying a single night at the Palms during a national park road trip and paying a $50 resort fee, finding only a handful of free pool chairs fully occupied, discovering that shaded seating cost extra, and realizing the internet was throttled unless they paid more. Another visitor described sitting down in an apparently empty pool chair at Excalibur, only to be approached within seconds by security and told the seat required payment. A business traveler at MGM Grand shared that despite paying $260 per night for a room, they were charged $50 per night to use the mini fridge and another $60 per night for a microwave, and faced ATM withdrawal fees of $12.99, enough to discourage them from gambling altogether. These stories aren't rants, they're moments of hesitation. So why did this happen? Because Las Vegas quietly redesigned itself. Casinos increasingly rely on high rollers to sustain profits, even as overall visitor volume declined roughly 7.9% in 2025, according to LVCVA data, with several individual months posting steeper drops. At the same time, large operators like MGM and Caesars carry heavy debt loads, making fees an attractive way to protect margins without raising headline room rates that appear in advertisements. Add dynamic and surge pricing, where the cost of drinks, water, or basic conveniences shifts by time and location, and prices begin to feel arbitrary rather than fair. The result isn't that middle-class travelers suddenly can't afford Las Vegas. It's that Las Vegas no longer feels like a value destination. Many families feel misled, not broke, and increasingly choose to stay home or redirect trips to places like Cancun or New Orleans, where costs feel clearer, more predictable, and easier to trust. But higher prices and hidden fees aren't the whole story. They hit at the same moment broader economic pressures began squeezing middle-class budgets nationwide, turning an already unpredictable Vegas trip into one many families simply can't justify anymore. And that growing wallet squeeze is the second major reason so many everyday visitors are choosing to stay home. For decades, Las Vegas worked precisely because it was the kind of trip middle-class families could still justify even when the economy felt shaky. It was short, flexible, and psychologically affordable. If money felt tight, people stayed fewer nights, drove instead of flying, or gambled less. But they still went. By late 2025, that safety valve is gone, not only because Vegas prices rose, but because broader economic pressure has fundamentally changed how middle-class households think about risk. You can see it clearly in everyday behavior. Families that once booked 4 nights now cap trips at 2. They eat off-strip, skip shows, and track spending in real time instead of relaxing. Casino floors still host high rollers, but the familiar middle-class volume, the crowds that once filled mid-tier tables, buffets, and casual bars, has thinned out. Consumer confidence tells part of the story. The Conference Board's Expectations Index sat below 80 for multiple months, a level that historically signals recession anxiety rather than optimism. Real disposable income growth slowed to roughly 1.9 and 2.5% year over year, while surveys from firms like Deloitte and McKinsey showed declining intent to spend on discretionary categories such as travel. Even drive-in behavior reflects this pressure. California, Vegas's single largest feeder market, saw noticeable softness in I-15 travel tied to tourism, compounded by construction bottlenecks and lingering wildfire disruptions that turned what used to be an easy road trip into a tiring one. But beyond the numbers, there's a psychological shift underway. Ongoing layoffs in tech and finance, combined with mortgage rates hovering around 7–8%, have made middle-class households far more cautious. Even families with stable incomes are behaving defensively, prioritizing savings and debt reduction over splurge trips. Under renewed recession concerns, especially amid policy uncertainty under Trump, Vegas starts to feel like the kind of trip you postpone just in case. The result is a broader pullback in travel spending. Overall, U.S. discretionary travel spending has softened by an estimated 5 and 7%, but the impact hits Vegas harder than most destinations because it sits squarely in the nice-to-have category rather than essential travel. The contrast with just a year or two earlier is sharp. In 2023 and early 2024, many middle-class families rushed back to Vegas in a post-COVID release, spending freely despite rising prices because they felt they were reclaiming lost experiences. That phase has ended. Now, with costs elevated and the economy uncertain, families are redirecting travel toward places that feel more predictable. Cancun's all-inclusive model continues to grow because travelers know the total bill up front. Cities like New Orleans maintain momentum because food, lodging, and entertainment still feel like value rather than exposure. Others opt for staycations or nearby casinos, especially as gambling expansion across the U.S. has erased Vegas's old monopoly. On the human level, the shift is easy to recognize. Families say they still have money, but no margin for mistakes. Californians talk about I-15 fatigue, layered on top of higher fuel costs. Service workers notice fewer midweek crowds, lower tips, and slower shifts. Underneath it all are deeper financial pressures. Cumulative inflation from 2021 to 2025 ran roughly 20-25%, while wages rose only about 12-15%, leaving an estimated 60% of middle-class households living paycheck to paycheck. Credit card debt hit a record $1.14 trillion in 2025, growing around 13% year over year, with interest rates in the 21-24% range, forcing families to prioritize debt over discretionary trips. Median household income hovered near $75,000, barely changed from pre-pandemic levels, while a 4-day Vegas trip for a family of 4 increasingly pushed toward $3,000 once flights, rooms, and on-trip costs were counted, well above a typical annual travel budget of $1,500, $2,000. Add job insecurity, high borrowing costs, and persistent economic uncertainty, and the psychology becomes clear. Middle-class travelers don't stop wanting experiences. They stop taking chances with their money. And that brings us to the next reason. As middle-class budgets tightened, Las Vegas didn't simply become harder to afford. It quietly changed who the city was actually built for. That shift is now visible both on the casino floor and in the data. Walk the Strip today and you'll notice a clear split. High-limit baccarat salons and VIP rooms remain active, while mass-market slots and low-limit tables feel noticeably thinner, especially midweek. According to the Nevada Gaming Control Board, baccarat revenue increased roughly 15-20% year over year in 2025, even as several mass-market table games underperformed. This wasn't a coincidence. The primary goal was to increase revenue by concentrating play among the most profitable customers. Casinos now rely heavily on a very small segment of players, roughly 5-10% of VIP guests. Whales, wagering $50,000 or more per trip, are estimated to generate up to 80% of gaming profit, allowing resorts to tolerate lower overall visitation while protecting margins. At the same time, $25 table minimums have become the norm across much of the Strip, quietly pushing casual and middle-class gamblers out of the market. Vegas has also leaned aggressively into wealthy international demand. LVCVA's September 2025 report shows overall occupancy around 78.7%, well below the roughly 90% peak in 2019, with RevPAR above $149 driven by higher pricing rather than volume. Weekends feel busy, largely due to wealthy international high rollers, $100+ pool parties, and $50 club covers. But from Tuesday through Thursday, the Strip often feels hollow. Without family shows or budget promotions, midweek occupancy frequently drops into the 70-75% range, and long stretches of the city feel empty. For middle-class families, especially drive-in visitors from the Midwest, where LVCVA data shows declines approaching 50%, this version of Vegas feels unfamiliar. Compared to regional casinos or markets like Atlantic City, where parking is often free, minimums are lower, and pricing feels clearer, Vegas no longer feels like the obvious choice. And that's the emotional breaking point. This isn't the middle class betraying Las Vegas. It's Las Vegas forgetting the people who built it. The city stopped saving them a seat. And once people feel they no longer belong, the entire experience changes. Every line feels longer, every fee feels sharper, every meal feels less worth it. Which leads directly to the next shift, because when belonging disappears, the trip doesn't just get more expensive, it stops feeling like a deal at all. One of the most noticeable changes in Las Vegas today is that higher prices no longer come with a better baseline experience. Rooms that now average $250 or more per night, plus mandatory $45 to $55 resort fees, don't feel smoother or more attentive than they did before 2019. When similar rooms were closer to $100 with $20 fees. Cocktail service in non-VIP areas can take 20 to 30 minutes, even during slower periods. Table minimums that once welcomed casual play now demand real financial comfort, and when service does arrive, it often feels transactional rather than warm. Reviews describe the same emotion again and again, paying more, playing less, and feeling nickel and dimed everywhere, compared to earlier eras when casinos worked hard to keep casual players comfortable and entertained. Today's floor feels optimized for efficiency, not enjoyment. That sense of imbalance becomes unavoidable once travelers start comparing Vegas to other options. Atlantic City still offers rooms in the $100 to $150 range and buffets around $25 to $35. Regional casinos maintain $15 table minimums, free parking, and simpler layouts that reduce friction. Cruises push the comparison even further. For roughly $1,500, travelers get an all-inclusive experience where food, entertainment, and lodging are bundled, predictable, and mentally easy. Against that backdrop, a basic 4-night Vegas trip for a family of 4, pushing $3,000 or more, feels hard to justify, not because it's the most expensive option, but because it demands the most effort while delivering the least sense of return. Talk to recent visitors and the reaction isn't anger, it's fatigue. It wasn't terrible, one guest says, it just wasn't worth it. Hospitality workers notice it too. Guests arrive tense, watch every dollar, and leave earlier than they used to. Locals say visitors spend less time on casino floors and more time retreating to their rooms. This is the quiet risk Vegas now faces. It hasn't become a bad destination. It's become a poor value experience for the middle class. And this isn't the middle class betraying Las Vegas. It's Las Vegas forgetting the people who built it. The city stopped saving them a seat. And once people feel they no longer belong, every line feels longer, every fee feels sharper, and every spin of the wheel feels less satisfying. Which naturally leads to the next shift, because when value disappears, even the core attractions that once defined Vegas lose their power to pull people back. There was a time when Las Vegas didn't need to explain itself. If you wanted real gambling, headline entertainment, and that larger-than-life escape, there was only one place to go. That exclusivity made the costs feel justified. Today, that advantage has quietly faded, and the shift shows up first in how middle-class gamblers make decisions. Many no longer plan a Vegas trip around gambling at all. Instead, they look closer to home. A flight to Vegas can easily cost $400 to $600 for a couple or family before a single bet is placed. Meanwhile, regional casinos and destinations like Atlantic City offer rooms in the $100 to $150 range, buffets around $25 to $35, and table minimums starting at $15. Vegas, by comparison, often asks $250 or more per night plus resort fees, with table minimums at $25 or higher. One casual gambler put it bluntly online, "Why fly across the country to play the same games for higher minimums?" That question alone would have sounded unthinkable 20 years ago. Entertainment followed the same path. Vegas once concentrated must-see shows in one place, making the trip feel unavoidable. Today, concerts, touring Broadway productions, and major sports events rotate through cities across the U.S. Middle-class travelers notice the overlap. "I saw the same show 2 hours from home," one visitor wrote, "and I didn't have to deal with Vegas prices or lines." Sphere shows and Formula One weekends still draw attention, but at $200 per ticket or more, they aren't mass-market replacements for what Vegas used to offer everyone. As exclusivity fades, Vegas ends up competing directly with other vacations, and that's where the value gap becomes harder to ignore. Cruises have emerged as a particularly strong alternative. A 7-day Caribbean or Mexico cruise often runs $1,000 to $1,500 per person, with lodging, food, and entertainment bundled. Carnival and Royal Caribbean effectively offer unlimited buffet dining included in the fare, roughly equivalent to $20 to $30 per day in perceived food value, and cabins that break down to about $150 per night. Against that, a 4-night Vegas trip for a family of 4 pushing $3,000 or more feels heavy. As one traveler commented, "On a cruise, I know what I'm paying. In Vegas, I'm just waiting for the next surprise charge." That desire for predictability has only grown as gambling itself becomes more accessible elsewhere. Online sports betting apps like DraftKings and FanDuel allow casual wagers from the couch, while nearby casinos such as Foxwoods in Connecticut still offer $20 tables without flights, resort fees, or extended stays. According to American Gaming Association surveys, U.S. sports betting grew roughly 30% year over year in 2025, proof that interest in gambling hasn't vanished. It's simply moved to places that feel easier. One bettor summed it up with a line that would have shocked Vegas executives years ago. "I still gamble. I just don't need Vegas to do it anymore." Talk to middle-class travelers today, and the tone is strikingly calm, almost resigned. They don't say Vegas is bad. They say it's unnecessary. "We didn't stop liking Vegas," one couple wrote after their last trip. "We just realized we didn't need it." That's the most dangerous conclusion a destination can face. Vegas hasn't collapsed, and it hasn't lost relevance overnight. But it has lost the one thing that once outweighed every flaw: exclusivity. And when a city built on impulse, spectacle, and loyalty becomes just another option, every fee feels sharper, every inconvenience feels louder, and every loss feels less justifiable. That shift leads us to another reason, one that matters especially to older middle-class travelers. Beyond price and value, many no longer feel comfortable with the environment Las Vegas has become. This isn't about a single bad experience. It's about how the city feels the moment you're inside it. Walk the Strip today, and the message is loud and visual. Lines of Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and McLarens idle at hotel entrances. Roped-off VIP areas funnel select guests into private lounges and baccarat salons with personal hosts. High-end retail and luxury branding dominate walkways. For some, this signals aspiration and success. For many middle-class visitors, particularly those in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, it triggers something else entirely: a subtle but unmistakable sense of not belonging. As one visitor put it online, "It felt like everything around me was designed to remind me how much money other people had." According to Vegas Advantage surveys in 2025, casino staff routinely prioritize high-limit players with faster service and quicker comps, while mass-market guests wait longer. No one is openly rude, but the hierarchy is clear. A Midwest couple described it this way: "We weren't treated badly. We were treated like we didn't matter." That emotional signal carries weight, especially for travelers who grew up with a very different version of Vegas. Then versus now, the contrast is striking. Older Vegas offered excess, yes, but it was democratic excess. You could walk the Strip at night, grab cheap food, watch free attractions, and feel part of the energy without needing a VIP wristband. Today, that same walk is louder, more crowded, and more segmented. The party atmosphere bleeds into daytime hours. Public intoxication feels more visible. Casino floors are filled with noise, smoke, and constant stimulation that never really shuts off. For younger visitors chasing nightlife, that intensity can still feel exciting. For older travelers and families, it often feels overwhelming. "It's loud, it's smoky, and it never slows down," one older visitor wrote. "By 8 p.m., we just wanted to escape." Demographics reflect that discomfort. LVCVA data from 2025 shows visitors aged 35 and 54, once a backbone of middle-class Strip traffic, declined by roughly 20%, while corporate and international high spenders increased their share. Midwest visitation dropped by nearly 50%. These aren't people who suddenly stopped traveling. They're people who changed where they feel comfortable, and their alternatives reveal a lot. Travelers aged 45 and up increasingly choose places built around calm rather than spectacle. Sedona, Arizona offers nature, space, and a wellness-oriented pace. Branson, Missouri attracts families with affordable, seated shows around $50 and environments designed to be welcoming rather than overwhelming. National parks and outdoor destinations promise clean air, daylight rhythms, and vacations that don't revolve around alcohol, crowds, or flashing lights. One former Vegas regular explained the shift simply: "At this stage of life, I don't want chaos." Even if prices stabilized and value improved, the atmosphere itself has shifted. Vegas didn't just get louder or flashier. It started signaling very clearly who it's for. And for a growing share of longtime visitors, that signal now says the same thing over and over again: "This place isn't built with you in mind anymore." After all of these changes, there's one final reason that quietly seals the decision for many middle-class families, and it has less to do with Las Vegas itself than with how entertainment habits have fundamentally changed. Over the past decade, a growing share of leisure spending has migrated away from physical destinations and into digital experiences that are cheaper, constant, and far easier to control. Gaming, online betting, streaming platforms, and at-home entertainment ecosystems now absorb money that once flowed naturally into trips like Vegas. For middle-class households, this isn't about replacing a vacation one for one. It's about redistribution. A few subscriptions here, in-game purchases there, a sports betting app on the phone. Each one feels small, but together they quietly shrink the discretionary budget that used to justify a Vegas trip. According to industry data through 2024, 2025, online gaming and digital entertainment spending continued to grow at double-digit rates, while streaming subscriptions became a fixed monthly cost for most households. The result is subtle, but powerful. By the time families look at travel, there's simply less left to spend, and Vegas no longer sits at the top of the priority list. Gambling itself has undergone the same shift. Sports betting apps and online casinos allow people to engage whenever they want, in controlled amounts, without flights, hotel stays, or resort fees. For many casual players, that convenience changes behavior permanently. "I still gamble," one former Vegas regular said. "I just do it from my couch now." When gambling becomes an everyday activity rather than a destination event, the emotional pull of Las Vegas weakens. At the same time, tastes are changing, especially among younger middle-class travelers who were once expected to replace older Vegas loyalists. This generation shows a clear preference for experiences that feel authentic, grounding, and shareable in a different way. Road trips, national parks, small-town exploration, cultural destinations, and outdoor activities like hiking or trekking align better with how they define value. These trips promise stories, scenery, and a sense of discovery rather than spectacle. Compared to that, a city built around casinos, nightlife, and shopping feels increasingly narrow. Even when younger travelers do spend on experiences, they often choose ones that connect them to nature, history, or local culture rather than controlled commercial environments. "Vegas feels like it's trying too hard," one traveler in their early 30s wrote. "I'd rather see something real." That sentiment matters because it signals a long-term shift, not a temporary trend. Vegas once thrived by being the most concentrated form of entertainment imaginable. Today, entertainment is everywhere, on phones, in living rooms, across landscapes, and curiosity pulls people outward rather than inward. Older middle-class travelers and younger ones arrive at the same conclusion from different directions. One group feels overstimulated and tired of the Strip. The other feels underwhelmed by it. Both groups reallocate time and money elsewhere. Locals and hospitality workers notice the result: fewer spontaneous trips, fewer first-timers who turn into regulars, and a visitor base increasingly dominated by either high-spending elites or short-term novelty seekers. This doesn't mean Las Vegas stops existing as a destination, but it does mean it stops being central to how people entertain themselves. And that's the most profound shift of all. When technology captures attention at home and curiosity pulls travelers toward nature and culture instead of casinos, Vegas loses the quiet advantage it once held, being the obvious place where entertainment lived. At a deeper level, what's happening in Las Vegas isn't a tourism slump. It's a model transition. For decades, Vegas thrived on a simple formula: mass middle-class volume, predictable pricing, cheap entertainment, and near-total monopoly over gambling and spectacle. That model worked because it matched how ordinary Americans lived, spent, and escaped. But the conditions that made it work no longer exist. The American middle class has less margin for error. Entertainment is no longer scarce. Gambling is no longer location-bound. And travel is no longer impulsive. It's deliberate, evaluated, and compared against dozens of alternatives. In response, Las Vegas didn't double down on accessibility. It pivoted upward: higher prices, heavier fees, VIP segmentation, luxury branding, and a willingness to accept fewer visitors in exchange for higher per capita spend. From a corporate perspective, that strategy makes sense. From a cultural perspective, it changes everything. Las Vegas was never just a destination. It was a pressure valve for the American middle class, a place where excess was affordable, mistakes were forgiven, and everyone felt entitled to a little indulgence. As that role fades, Vegas starts to resemble something else entirely: a city optimized for elites, corporations, and short bursts of spectacle, rather than repeatable, generational loyalty. This isn't unique to Vegas. It mirrors a broader American shift toward tiered experiences, where comfort, speed, and dignity increasingly depend on how much you can pay. Airlines, concerts, sports, housing. Vegas is simply where that reality becomes impossible to ignore. The city won't disappear, but it will become narrower, less forgiving, and less emotionally central to everyday Americans. And that raises the real question going forward. Can Las Vegas survive as a profitable city without being a beloved one? So, here's the question I want to leave you with. Do you think Las Vegas lost the middle class because people changed, or because the city chose to change first? If you've been to Vegas recently, did it still feel worth it, or did something feel off in a way you couldn't quite explain? And if you stopped going altogether, what finally made you decide it wasn't for you anymore? Share your experience in the comments, not the highlight reel, but the moment when your relationship with Vegas shifted. If this video made you see Las Vegas differently, give it a like so others can find it too. Subscribe for more deep dives like this, and share it with someone who used to love Vegas but hasn't been back in years. Because once a city stops being built for the people who made it, the real story isn't what was lost. It's what comes next.